I was at the airport, waiting for my flight to an important business conference. I was wearing an orthopedic boot due to an ankle injury and needed a wheelchair to get around. My condition forced me to rely on the help of others and the wheelchair that the airport had kindly provided. It was then that I met Karen, the woman who tried to steal my wheelchair for her tired son. Karen was an arrogant-looking woman, with a small child who seemed exhausted. She watched me intently as I waited at the boarding gate. My cat, who was comfortably settled in a small carrier, attracted glances and comments from many passengers around us. If you like following bizarre stories on Reddit, subscribe below and turn on notifications. Chapter 2: Arrival at the Airport. My arrival at the airport was meticulously planned. I knew that, with the ankle injury, every step would be a challenge, and with my cat, Lion, in his carrier, the logistics would become even more complicated. I arrived early, with enough time to handle any unforeseen issues that might arise. Upon entering the terminal, I was immediately directed to the special assistance line. The staff were extremely attentive, ensuring that I had a suitable wheelchair and that Lion was safe and comfortable in his carrier. Every move I made was calculated to avoid further pain in my ankle. Going through security was a long process, but not without its peculiarities. Lion, despite the chaotic environment, behaved exemplarily. Many passengers, noticing such a calm cat amid the airport hustle, approached to admire and praise his tranquility. It was almost comical how, amid my own discomfort, Lion became the center of attention, receiving more affection and care than I did. As we slowly progressed through the security line, I noticed a woman and a child watching me from a distance. The woman, whom I would come to know as Karen, had a fixed, evaluating gaze. Her son, beside her, seemed restless and tired. They both watched intently as the TSA agents examined my orthopedic boot and Lion's carrier. I felt a slight discomfort under that critical gaze, but I focused on moving forward. After the security check, an airport staff member, noticing my difficulty, offered to help me get to the boarding gate. I gratefully accepted the help, knowing that every meter traveled was a relief for my injured ankle. He carefully guided me through the busy terminal, finding a path that avoided the most congested areas. Upon reaching the boarding gate, the staff member found a suitable spot for me to wait for the flight. It was a relatively quiet area, close to the airplane entrance, making boarding easier when the time came. I settled into the wheelchair, trying to find a comfortable position, while Lion rested in his carrier at my feet. It was at this moment that Karen and her son reappeared. She seemed to have been watching me since the security line and now slowly approached. I felt her sharp gaze as she came closer, and a sense of apprehension began to grow within me. However, I tried to ignore it and focus on keeping myself and Lion calm. Time passed, and people around continued to admire Lion, which, in a way, helped distract me from the pain and the uncomfortable situation. I noticed that Karen was growing increasingly restless, casting quick, evaluative glances in my direction. Her son, visibly exhausted, sat on the floor next to her, occasionally pointing at me and asking questions I couldn't hear. As the boarding time approached, more and more passengers began to crowd around the gate. The noise and agitation increased, but I remained focused, trying to avoid any movement that might aggravate my injury. Lion, on the other hand, remained unfazed, almost as if he was enjoying the attention he was receiving from everyone. Then, the unexpected happened. Karen, accompanied by her son, approached me directly. Her determined look and the exhausted expression of the boy suggested that something was about to happen. Before I could react, Karen started to speak, demanding that I give up my wheelchair for her son. The situation unfolded quickly, and the calm environment I had found began to disintegrate. "My son is tired and needs to sit down. You can't be so selfish," Karen said in a tone that didn't allow for disagreement. Her approach was so abrupt that it left me momentarily speechless. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm sorry, but I'm injured and really need the wheelchair to get around," I responded, trying to be as polite as possible. Karen didn't accept my explanation. Her eyes narrowed, and she began to accuse me of being insensitive and selfish. "You can't be so cruel. My son is exhausted, and you're there with your cat, occupying a wheelchair he needs." The situation was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. People around started to notice the conflict and cast curious glances in our direction. Karen, however, seemed immune to the negative attention. She continued insisting, raising her voice and increasing the tension in the air. "You should be ashamed. How can you be so insensitive? My son is suffering, and you're doing nothing to help," she exclaimed, gesticulating exaggeratedly to draw even more attention. With each of Karen's words, I felt a mix of anger and frustration growing inside me. It was clear that she wasn't going to give up easily and that I needed to stand firm. The wheelchair was essential for my mobility, and giving it up would mean not only pain but also a greater risk of aggravating my injury. In a firm but controlled tone, I repeated my position. Ma'am, I understand that your son is tired, but I really need this wheelchair. I'm injured and can't stand for long periods. Karen's reaction was immediate and furious. She started shouting, calling me selfish and accusing me of disregarding a child's needs. The scene unfolding attracted more and more attention, creating a small crowd of onlookers around the boarding gate. Chapter 3, Confrontation with Karen. The tranquility I had found while settling near the boarding gate was quickly destroyed when Karen and her son approached. With a determined expression and a tone of voice that allowed no contest, Karen demanded that I give up my wheelchair for her tired son. My son is exhausted and needs to sit down. You can't be so selfish, she said, staring at me with piercing eyes. I tried to stay calm and explain my situation. I'm sorry, but I'm injured and really need the wheelchair to get around, I responded politely, hoping she would understand. But Karen wasn't willing to accept my explanation. Her expression became even more severe, and she began to accuse me of being insensitive and selfish. You can't be so cruel. My son is exhausted, and you're there with your cat, occupying a wheelchair he needs. The situation was becoming increasingly tense. People around started to notice the conflict and cast curious glances in our direction. Karen, however, seemed immune to the negative attention. She continued insisting, raising her voice and increasing the tension in the air. You should be ashamed. How can you be so insensitive? My son is suffering, and you're doing nothing to help, she exclaimed, gesticulating exaggeratedly to draw even more attention. With each of Karen's words, I felt a mix of anger and frustration growing inside me. It was clear that she wasn't going to give up easily and that I needed to stand firm. The wheelchair was essential for my mobility, and giving it up would mean not only pain but also a greater risk of aggravating my injury. In a firm but controlled tone, I repeated my position. Ma'am, I understand that your son is tired, but I really need this wheelchair. I'm injured and can't stand for long periods. Karen's reaction was immediate and furious. She started shouting, calling me selfish and accusing me of disregarding a child's needs. The scene unfolding attracted more and more attention, creating a small crowd of onlookers around the boarding gate. Chapter 4, Escalation of the Conflict. The situation was already tense, but everything got worse when Karen, in a desperate act, encouraged her son to climb onto my wheelchair. The boy, following his mother's orders, tried to climb the chair, pressing on my injured ankle and causing excruciating pain. The pain was so intense that I instinctively pushed the boy away, resulting in a chaotic scene and drawing even more attention from everyone around. He pushed my son. This is unacceptable. Karen shouted, her voice laden with indignation. Immediately, the nearby flight attendant rushed over to intervene. She tried to understand what was happening and calm everyone down, but Karen didn't relent. This man attacked my son. He should be removed from the flight immediately. Karen continued, pointing her finger at me. The flight attendant, visibly shaken by the situation, asked for calm and began to inquire about what had happened. Ma'am, please calm down. We need to understand what happened here. We'll resolve this in the best possible way, said the flight attendant, trying to mediate the situation. I quickly explained that the boy had tried to climb onto my chair and that I pushed him instinctively to protect my injured ankle. I'm injured and need this wheelchair to get around, I added, trying to stay calm. However, Karen didn't want to listen. This is absurd. My son is tired, and this man is being cruel and selfish. He should be expelled from this flight, she insisted, gesticulating exaggeratedly and further elevating the tension in the air. Meanwhile, the boy, apparently encouraged by his mother's anger, made another attempt to approach the wheelchair. Once again, I felt a sharp pain in my ankle. The flight attendant, realizing the gravity of the situation, called airport security on the radio. The response from security was swift. 2 officers appeared and began to assess the situation. Karen, seeing the officers approaching, changed her tactic. My son is just tired. Why doesn't anyone understand that? He needs to rest, and this man is preventing us, she whined, trying to elicit sympathy from the officers. The officers, however, maintained their professional composure. Ma'am, we understand that your son is tired, but this passenger is injured and has the right to use the wheelchair. We need to resolve this calmly and civilly, said one of the officers, trying to pacify the situation. But Karen was far from calming down. This is an injustice. This man is a brute. He attacked my son, and now you're siding with him, she shouted, tears starting to roll down her face in a mix of anger and frustration. Her son, also crying, clung to his mother, adding to the dramatic scene unfolding. At this point, a small crowd of curious passengers had already gathered around, watching the commotion. Some began to murmur among themselves, discussing the situation. The pressure was mounting, and the flight attendant, seeing that the situation was about to spiral out of control, asked the security officers to take Karen and her son away to resolve the issue. "Ma'am, please come with us. Let's talk in a more private area so we can resolve this without causing more disturbances," suggested one of the officers, trying to guide Karen and her son to a more isolated area. Karen, initially reluctant, eventually relented, still protesting against what she considered a great injustice. Meanwhile, the pain in my ankle was worsening. The flight attendant, seeing my condition, offered assistance to calm me down. "Are you okay? Do you need anything else?" she asked, with a look of genuine concern. "I'm fine, thank you. I just need a moment to gather myself," I replied, trying to maintain composure despite the growing pain. Lion, sensing my distress, let out a soft meow, as if trying to comfort me. As Karen and her son were taken away, I heard murmurs from the passengers around me. Some expressed sympathy for my situation, while others seemed divided about who was truly in the right. The tension in the air was palpable, and I just hoped everything would be resolved as quickly as possible. After a few minutes, one of the security officers returned and addressed me. "Sir, we apologize for the inconvenience. We're handling the situation. Please stay calm. We'll ensure you're comfortable until boarding." I thanked the officer and tried to calm down. The adrenaline from the confrontation was still coursing through my veins, but knowing that security was handling Karen gave me some relief. The flight attendant also returned, offering a drink and a few more comforting words. As we waited for the final resolution, I heard more discussions in the distance. It seemed that Karen was refusing to cooperate with the officers, insisting on her version of the story and claiming she had the right to be on that flight. The situation was dragging on longer than expected. Finally, after a few minutes that felt like hours, the security officers returned with Karen and her son. Karen was still protesting, but now with a more resigned tone. "This isn't over. I'm going to complain to the airline. I'll take this to court," she shouted as she was escorted out of the terminal. The flight attendant turned to me with a reassuring smile. "Sir, we apologize for all the confusion. We'll make sure your boarding goes smoothly from here on out. If you need anything, please let us know." I thanked her again, feeling immense relief that the situation was finally under control. However, the pain in my ankle was a constant reminder of what had just happened. I knew I'd have to deal with the physical and emotional consequences of this incident for some time. As boarding time finally arrived, I was one of the first to be called. The flight attendant helped me settle on the plane, ensuring that Lion was secure in his carrier beside me. Sitting in my seat, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. I was about to leave behind one of the most stressful episodes I had ever experienced at an airport. As the plane took off, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I knew the journey wasn't over yet, but at least I was one step closer to reaching my destination. I silently thanked the staff who helped me and promised myself that, somehow, I'd find a way to overcome this experience and move forward. Chapter 5, Conclusion. The situation continued to deteriorate when Karen encouraged her son to try again, resulting in more pain for me. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, the flight attendant called airport security to handle it. 2 officers arrived quickly, addressing Karen and her son firmly. "Ma'am, we need you and your son to come with us to resolve this situation," one of the officers said, trying to guide Karen away. However, Karen initially refused to cooperate, claiming she had the right to the flight and that she was being wronged. "This is a complete injustice. I have a right to this flight," she exclaimed, resisting the officers. The officers, maintaining their calm, explained that her behavior was disturbing the peace and safety of other passengers. "Ma'am, we need you to cooperate so we can resolve this in the best possible way. Please come with us," repeated one of the officers, this time with a more authoritative tone. After much resistance, Karen and her son were finally escorted out of the airport by security. The crowd of passengers watched in silence, some still murmuring about the commotion they had just witnessed. The tension in the air was palpable, but Karen's exit brought noticeable relief to everyone around. After the tumult, the flight attendant turned to me with a reassuring smile. "Sir, we apologize for all the confusion. We'll make sure your boarding goes smoothly from here on out. If you need anything, please let us know," she said, with a look of genuine concern. "Thank you," I replied, still feeling the pain in my ankle and the emotional exhaustion from the confrontation. Lion, sensing my distress, let out a soft meow, as if trying to comfort me. I knew that the support from the airport staff had been crucial in preventing the situation from getting worse. The airport security offered additional assistance and a more comfortable place for me to wait until boarding. As I waited, I reflected on the injustice of the situation and Karen's irrational behavior. I knew I would face the physical and emotional repercussions of this incident for some time. The airline, seeking to make amends, offered me compensation vouchers and ensured that Karen was banned from flying with them again. My ankle injury worsened due to the commotion, and I had to prolong the use of the orthopedic boot, making my recovery even slower and more painful. When it was finally time to board, I was one of the first to be called. The flight attendant helped me settle on the plane, ensuring that Lion was secure in his carrier beside me. Sitting in my seat, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. I was about to leave behind one of the most stressful episodes I had ever experienced at an airport. As the plane took off, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I knew the journey wasn't over yet, but at least I was one step closer to reaching my destination. I silently thanked the staff who helped me and promised myself that, somehow, I'd find a way to overcome this experience and move forward. The story quickly went viral on social media, capturing the public's attention with its drama and injustice. Many identified with the frustration of dealing with selfish and irrational people, and the fair resolution, where Karen was punished, provided a sense of satisfaction to the viewers. The engaging narrative, with Karen clearly as the villain and me as the hero facing adversities, kept the audience interested until the end. The social media buzz brought unexpected support, with many expressing solidarity with my situation and condemning Karen's attitude. This wave of support gave me the strength to move forward and face the consequences of the incident. Looking back, I saw that despite the challenges, I managed to maintain my dignity and resilience, proving that even in the most difficult situations, it's possible to find a fair and honorable way out. If you like this story and don't want to miss any of Reddit's next amazing stories, subscribe below and turn on notifications. Here every week you will discover hidden stories from Reddit.